When I was about 55, I decided that I ought to give to my children some of this Australian heritage of mine that they were missing. And that's the reason I undertook them. Yes, that's all there. This was a little interlude, getting ready to leave. Maybe after I was through, I really realized that what I was writing them for was for me, to try to bring my Australian self back alive into my American self, to heal up the wound I had created. And finally, my father came down and spent a couple of hours with you and me, Rain, along the harbour front. He took those pictures, the ones where Steve thought I had put you at the camera in an artificial way instead of holding you naturally. And after he took the pictures, he drove me back to Grandma's and dropped me off and kissed me quietly and undemonstratively. And that was the last time I ever saw him. I put myself alone in the world, heedlessly, thoughtlessly, not knowing what I was doing, and hurting others as I did it. I can hardly believe it as I write it. I did that to my life. I left behind all that good, solid, count honorable love. I left behind me, although I didn't know it. I left behind me when I left behind all the people who reflected back to me, the me I was acquainted with already, and I stepped out into the unknown. Steve said to me, "Hey, I'm not in you. Where am I in your memoirs?" And I said, "Well, you're the happy part of the story." I said, "You know how children's stories, they go along to a point and then they say, and then they lived happily ever afterwards. They don't write that part, the happily ever afterwards." I said, that's why I ended there. There's no, happily ever afterwards isn't a story. There's no drama in that. Now these are very much like my father. This one was after he built the new house, and he's sitting in a bay window where he installed glass which would allow the actinic rays to come through and give him a sun. He's still working on his suntan. So he would draw the curtains aside and hope that he could get tans through the glass. It never worked, of course, but he kept on trying. And this is the chair that he always sat in to read his British medical journals. And he would often give me little excerpts from what he'd learnt.
Albert Ascot Payne was born in Pyrmont in Sydney, along with his twin brother Alfred. He was curious and energetic and brilliant, winning prizes in geology and chemistry at Sydney University. He married Vera and became a physician.
In those days, the doctor lived in his home, and he dedicated the front two rooms to a surgery and waiting room. So he was kind of living on his work. And he would go inside and see patients. And if there were times when there weren't many people there, he'd come out and play the piano, and then he'd go back and see his next patient. So we saw him, but he was always on the go kind of thing.
Dr. Payne wasn't just busy with his patients. He had a lifelong interest in geology, and he loved getting outdoors into the bush.
My mother wouldn't get involved, but he would grab me, and off we would go to a little adventure in the bush. And sometimes we took a billy, you know, and so then maybe my brother came then, or 3 or 4 of us would go and take a billy and make tea. But a lot of the time we would just dive into the bush. He loved to go beyond any roads, any paths, just take a look at the sun and a look at his watch so that he had the directions, and dive into the bush and down into the little gullies and up the waterfalls and all around. It was so much fun. We had such adventures. Then when we went to Cronulla, he would do a series of investigations on the channels that would form. The waves would come in, but there'd always be a channel that would carry the water out, a narrow channel. My brother used to use it for surfing. They would call it the escalator. They would carry them out beyond the waves so that they could come in again and ride a wave. But my father was interested in what distance between these channels, because he was doing a study of the physics of wave formation. Next one, where I'm probably 10 or 11, something like that. In the garden, our older house had a piece of spare land beside it, which my father subsequently built on. But at this point, we had a garden there.
Dr. Payne's medical practice was thriving. He saw patients in his surgery and he visited them in their homes. He liked Bev to go along with him on those patient visits. Around 1935, he decided to build a new house right next door to the old one, but the project caused problems between Albert and Vera.
Mother dreamt of some lovely, unique house. She had an octagonal one in mind and described it. My father wanted a practical house, as much for his money as he could get. My mother had a dream, my father a bank book, and never the twain could meet. Father had some plans drawn up, a model made. He was dissatisfied and fired the architect and went ahead on his own. And he supervised the construction himself and made it solid, double brick walls on the outer walls and single brick on the inner. But he lost Mother again. If only he had known how to handle her dream.
Albert got a new kitchen along with the new house. He had a scientific interest in cooking.
He got interested in cooking. I think he wanted to preserve the nutrients of the food. So he developed a series of containers with saucepans inside them. He drove the cooks, every cook he knew, mad, because he would always be telling them, no, you should do this and you should be doing that. He'd interfere with the cooking, which was not his sphere at all. They didn't like it at all. He was intruding. I think mostly my father pined, yearned for, longed for my mother's love, and she couldn't give it. She was dutiful. She did everything he would want her to do, and she was very, very dutiful. She tested the urines out in the kitchen. She did the bookwork. She took messages. She talked to patients if he needed her to. She helped in the surgery from time to time. She did everything he would want her to do, except enjoy herself. This would be my father practicing golf in his backyard. He was very interested in tennis and in golf, and he played golf probably once a week, but poorly in both. He didn't play either golf or tennis at all well, and he was certainly not satisfied with his game, but he still enjoyed doing it.